Meghan secretly blackmailed Beatrice, Andrew's poor daughter accepts silence to protect her father. Hello and a very warm welcome back to LVT News. A royal expert has to share that Nissan Harriman is a photographer Meghan Markle likes to use. While using Meghan's photographer does not make Princess BH was really a friend of Meghan's necessarily. When we start to add up all these little coincidences, the picture becomes a lot. Beatrice was the one who let Harry and Meghan film their stupid reality show from inside of the late Queen's playhouse, and that seemed kind of strange because we had been hearing about how the Queen's final years were made miserable thanks to Meghan and Harry. So why would Beatrice want to cozy up with Meghan when Meghan was so incredibly rude to be at Mrs. Beloved grandmother? And as I'm sure most of you remember, Virginia, Jeffrey filed a civil suit against Prince Andrew, so he was facing going to trial, but instead of going to trial, they decided to settle out of court. And why was that? Could it be that one reason was because of all the skeletons in Meghan's closet, because she actually was identified as a witness thanks to her being a close associate of Andrew in Harry's book? He claimed that Meghan did not recognize Andrew and that she didn't even know who he was. But the problem with that is, so what if Beatrice is scared that Meghan's going to spill the beans when it comes to what she knows about Andrew and the yachts and Epstein? Then again, Meghan would also be implicating herself in that horrible mess. But what if she is telling Beatrice to stay her friend or else she is going to get back at her? Why would Princess Eugenie choose Meghan and Harry, knowing good and well that Meghan used Eugenie's wedding to promote her fake pregnancy? Why is it that it seems like the York family are all siding with Harry over the rest of the family? What did they decide to align themselves with the most unpopular royals because they think their uncle is not being all warm about Andrew and Sarah Ferguson? Something here does not add up, and reportedly Miss Anne Harrison also played a large part in Meghan and Harry getting together. There is something mysterious going on for sure. At the time of the engagement, Buckingham Palace claimed the photographs had been taken by Eugenie. Or have Harry and Meghan just lied to everybody and been using Beatrice like they're using everybody else? Honestly, Beatrice didn't seem too happy to see them at Her Majesty the Queen's funeral. Meghan has tried to portray Eugenie as a traitor, but I remember at the Jubilee it was Eugenie and Beatrice who refused to move so that Harry and Meghan could have the aisle seats and then insert themselves into the procession, leaving St. Paul's when the service. Oh, poor Meghan. Thanks to Beatrice and Eugenie, she really missed an excellent opportunity to make herself look important. Beatrice's wedding was also kept a secret so that Meghan would not have the chance to do something to try to overshadow it on that day, and Eugenie also was trusted enough to keep the secret too. The fact is, I have not trusted Eugenie for a long time, but I never really had a problem with Beatrice. I always felt like she was real. I always thought that she was a much better person than her sister, nicer. I don't have a problem with Beatrice. She married a wonderful man with some status thanks to his father, and he's a wealthy businessman all on his own. They also has her stepson and daughter, and she looks better than she ever has before. She seems so confident lately. I liked how at Catherine's Christmas concert, both Ito and BA showed a lot of affection and respect to William Catherine. It seems to me like Beatrice is trying to distance herself from her parents and her sister, and I don't blame her one bit. I think Eugenie is the one that we can't trust here. She's the resentful second child married to a wine salesman, and I could understand why she would want to ally herself with Harry. But along the way it seems like she got trapped in Meghan's web of. About Epstein, we already know that he was Andrew's friend, but the one who has a lot more to worry about is Meghan, because then her yacht days and the porn films begin to leak out and people may just start talking. I think Meghan's bullying powers are going downhill because she doesn't have much money now. So she's not going to be able to afford these high-priced lawyers all the time. Nissan Harriman is a very manipulative photographer, and she is part of Meghan's disturbed world. I don't believe that Andrew right now is in any position to decide against his brother. He's dependent on. And Andrew's hardly poor, but still he's required to cut his own cloth. Now he's supposed to move into Frogmore, and Fergie knows all too well What's going to happen in the royal family to outsiders who choose sides? But for all her mistakes and all her fault, I can't help but like her. She's not like Meghan Markle now, Eugenie. I cannot stand that woman, but she doesn't have any real power essentially at the end of the day. She's a... And I always suspected that it might have been Eugenie who gave permission for the late Queen's playhouse to be used without permission from the Queen. Of course, I always assumed that Beatrice stands a little away from the rest of the family like Andrew and Eugenie, but I may be wrong in that. Who knows, maybe they're thick as thieves behind closed doors. It is a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Unfortunately, the harm doesn't only comes the deceiver, but often other people are caught up in the web. I think those two girls should just learn to mind their own business and stay out of the world of both Harry and Meghan. And it's not because Harry and Meghan may harm them, but because it may harm other people who simply don't deserve it. It has happened before, and this whole scandalous story hasn't it? Both the late Queen and the Duke of Edward were bullied by both Harry and Meghan in their last days on Earth. So has my opinion of Meghan changed? Well, no, I've never liked her. She's like most mediocre actresses, she just wants more and more fame. Most actors and actresses crave validation, and I think the problems that Harry's been talking about have always been there. I just think Meghan has been encouraging him to be more vocal about his problems with his family. I suspect the issues have always been there, but Meghan pushed Harry to be true to himself, whatever that means. From my perspective, Harry and Meghan are not good for one another. They're toxic. Harry really needed somebody like Camilla. I'm not necessarily talking about in terms of personality, but in terms of everything that she does for Charles. Somebody who's self-assured, somebody who's grounded in reality, somebody with a good sense of humor and who doesn't care what anybody thinks of her. Camilla is so strong, and she's a wonderful support system for Charles. Actually, Charles is pretty sensitive. I think Harry needs a strong woman like Camilla. But Meghan also needs somebody strong because she's not strong at all. What we've got here are two people who are very needy and very sensitive, and they simply are not receiving the support that they need from their partners. So their neediness are just feeding into each other's neediness. Just look at William and Catherine, for example. I mean, that is one stable marriage. Catherine is not desperate for validation all the time. She is perfectly happy to spend time with her family, her beautiful children and her husband. Now Catherine has actually helped William a lot. He used to be a little rough around the edges, but he has also brought her out of her shell a little bit, so they help each other. They complement each other. And I was hoping for the best, especially after their wedding and the celebrations in the UK. But everything started falling apart pretty quickly afterwards, beginning with Rockmore Cottage, where from the fuss we would have thought the late Queen had banished them to living in some kind of garden tool shed. Meghan just believed that she was going to be surrounded by servants that she could order around. They would be peeling grapes and putting them in her mouth. They would be polishing her fingernails all the time and just fawning over her, giving into her every need, and all of a sudden she realized that actually this job required work, that she was always going to be in the public eye where she had to act right, and she didn't have much control in the situation, and that's when everything fell. See, Meghan knew what she was getting herself into, but being a classic narcissist, she thought she was going to be able to change things to see what her needs. It was at that point that Meghan began her campaign of complaints and plans to decamp with her new prince as her tool of influence. Let's remember that infamous comment from Harry, "What Meghan wants make and guess, I guess the rest is history." And we can be sure that His Majesty definitely did his homework on Meghan and her background. His Majesty, I'm sure, was also aware of any backlash if they had counseled against the marriage. It's just a classic case of being painted into a corner. The strategy of not reacting to Meghan, Harry and their PR machine is precisely the right strategy at the end of the day. Meghan and Harry are going to destroy themselves. They don't need any help, and they'll be despised by more people than they are.